I was listening in preparation for speaking to you to the Woman's Hour that you did. Nope, the Desert Island Discs that you did. And you have this now incredibly beautiful and heartbreaking kind of final statement about feeling like your life had all the jigsaw pieces in it mainly, and jokingly, not the Oscar. Everyone always has a piece that they're missing. And you sound very, very grateful and peaceful. And there is a sense of, narrative conclusion to the end of that interview. But it was a few months before what you described. I would make clear so that it doesn't sound too flippant, as a sort of giant unexpected plot twist. What happened with Jacob? Could you just tell the beginning of that for us?
Yeah, so in I think I did the Desert Island Discs maybe in either the April of 2017, but anyway, or April 2018 even, but in June 2018, Jacob, my partner of nearly 18 years, collapsed with a brain seizure. We later realized it was a reaction to some medication he had been on. But what ensued after that was that Jacob kind of went into kind of a total physical, cognitive, psychotic breakdown over the next 2 weeks and was placed in a medically induced coma for 7 months. And he woke up again in January 2019. And it was very apparent that Jacob was very changed, and that actually, whilst he had survived, what we discovered was a rare form of encephalitis, anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis. He himself had to learn how to, walk again and connect again and find agency and language and really find himself again. But what was very key and at the center of that was that Jacob had also developed a really rare delusion called Capgras delusion, which is the belief in imposters and doubles, and it can often be focused on the person that they're closest to, or it could be a house, or it could even be a pet. But with Jacob, it was focused on me. And so when Jacob woke up in those early months of 2019, he believed that I was an imposter, and that over time he came to accept that I was someone who was working for the state, helping to look after him and his children. And so this kind of extraordinary period happened where Jacob had gone through this very, at times truly critical medical experience, but actually, as we then evolved into his rehab and his recovery and he came home, we also had to deal with, for the next 18 months, 2 years, Jacob was really gripped by this delusion that I was someone else. And so it that in itself, in terms of that big plot twist, was really shocking and kind of flipped, Jacob and my life completely upside down, but also obviously the lives of our family, and in particular the lives of our children, who at the time were 14 and 16.
Wow.
And so it's, and so I subsequently,
Forgive me for interrupting. There is this.
No. Do say.
You write about this so beautifully, and that whole, any part of that story would have been a very difficult experience to go through. 6 months with your beloved in a coma is a extraordinarily formative time, and that you write about this scene. And I am thinking of it as scenes because you think of it as scenes, and we think of life as scenes in a cafe with a friend whilst he was still in the coma, who asked you, "What is your biggest fear?" Can you just recall that moment for me and how you think about it now looking back?
Yeah, I mean, actually, funny enough, I think in the book, the friend says, "What if he doesn't remember who you are?" And I don't think I believed that was possible. That felt like such a trope, such a cliche. And I think that was one of the things when it happened, was it just felt slightly ridiculous. I'd watched movies where it happened. And it, I hadn't realized that, in a way I hadn't realized that, of course, as someone who makes life and creates that into fiction, then that has to come from somewhere. So I think my initial reaction was when Jake did first wake up, and he was a little bit like a kind of bear coming out of hibernation, and so I kind of put down his grumpiness and his slightly kind of strange, kind of dark-eyed stare of me as he just didn't know, he just couldn't orientate himself. But there was one clear moment where Jacob was finally off his ventilator. He'd been off the ventilator, and he was brought out in a wheelchair, and all of Jake's family and his young, nephews and nieces had come to see him, and our children were there, and he was reunited with our dog, and it was an incredibly moving moment as we wheeled him around this square, Queen Square. If you've ever been, Jake was at the National Hospital, and there's this square, which I think if anyone's ever been there, they know it's a very strange, sort of almost like Richard Curtis-esque kind of rom-com square, because there's so many kind of changes of seasons that go on there, and there's always, extraordinary, families with obviously very sick children and lovers and builders, and it's a sort of strange place, but I took huge comfort from it. And we were walking Jacob around the square, and I'm filming him, and there are two things I find really unsettling about it. One is that I'm talking to Jacob like he's a child. I'm saying, "Look, Jake, look, isn't it amazing? Smile." And the other is that Jacob is increasingly irritated by this person behind the screen. And it was around that time that I started to truly suspect Jacob didn't know who I was. And it was Valentine's Day, where it was really distilled, when I came in with this cheesy red hot balloon, and the nurse encouraged him to give me a Valentine's gift, which was a sort of kind of one of those cheap garage roses, in plastic. And Jake looked so horrified and embarrassed for me that when she said, give your wife the rose, he went, "That's not my wife." And at the time, you talk about the screenplay writer in me. There was always that voice bartering. I was always bartering with drama. I was always, real terrifying, tragic moments. I was always at the time going, "Is this good drama? Is this a good moment? Is this a good scene?" But also I was always sort of playing around with things people said. So Jacob just saying, "She's not my wife," at the time I was like, "No, I'm not his wife. In fact, I'm his girlfriend." And in fact, that was quite an issue for Jake and I, that we'd never got married. So, or even those little things I would grasp and try and shake and change and reshape and make them work for my story, my version of the story. But that sort of form of interrogation and that form of storytelling became absolutely essential to survive the experience, I think.
One of the things that Jacob said to you throughout your marriage was be present, or, stay here in the moment. How much do you think that...
He said, "Be careful, you're going to..." Yeah.
You tell me.
He said, "Be careful. He said, be careful, you're going to miss your life."
Gosh.
And I think about that. And the awful thing is I still think about that, because it's amazing how you think you learn from these experiences, and then old habits kick back in, and you get busy again, and you forget again. And, you said about me seeming at peace. Well, I refer to it in the book as I question whether I was too smug. I'd got too comfortable, because I think if you come from, my parents had a very acrimonious divorce, and I think if you come from divorce, it's something that you always know is in the wheelhouse of experience. So I had always constantly never really trusted my relationship, or trusted that something could survive. And I think around about the time I did Desert Island Discs, and obviously you get seduced by the narrative of that show anyway. You're trying to sum up your life in whatever, 7 records or something, which is pretty damn impossible. But I think I did question whether that the gods above had sort of slightly tried to yank my chain, and pride comes before a fall for me. So there are a lot of kind of quite destructive, self-flagellating elements to that, and I have had to, and I still have to work that on the kind of idea that we don't always draw these bad things to us. Then unfortunately they just happen, which is what happened with Jake.
Yeah. Abby, honestly, when I read that, I had a little cry. I wanted to give you such a big hug, which is very impertinent because we've never met. But you are so hard on yourself. You're so hard on yourself. No, you didn't sound smug at all.
Well, that's good. I mean, I don't know if I'm hard on myself. I think I am searching to be truthful. I mean, that sounds very earnest, because of course we're all creations, we're all manufactured. I've told this story of this book several times. I'm constantly catching my phrases that I've used and checking my authenticity, but I guess I'm always challenging myself. It's you can never see the back of your head. The only way you can see the back of your head is if you put a mirror up to it. And I'm constantly trying to put a mirror up and going, "What are you doing here? Why are you doing that?" And I think part of it is that it's hypervigilance. I think if you grow up in a very creative, very busy, very often chaotic, often wonderful, but often difficult household, you stay very vigilant and you try and keep ahead of yourself. I think what was humbling about the experience that happened to Jacob, and actually subsequently also happened to me when I had my own health scare in the middle of it all, was that I realized I didn't have the ability to control the narrative. I didn't have the ability to take control of everything. And this is where I developed this new thing, which has been really powerful for me, which is I can't even believe I'm saying this on air, but I now do this thing, which is I open my arms up literally at the most difficult moments. And I say, universe, it's in your arms. And I literally go, help me sometimes now, because I realize I cannot control everything about what's happened to us and what will happen in the future and what is happening in the world. That doesn't mean I don't think that I can affect change, and that doesn't mean that I won't continue to be hard on myself. But I see what you may see as hard, I see as vigilant. And also I see as important to check yourself, important to interrogate yourself. I mean, I don't think it makes you the funnest person at the party, if I'm honest, but I do think it's just part of my mechanism of how I live.